Here.
Tanya Duty,
Here.
Clint Moses,
Here.
Carl Palmer,
Here.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Here.
Charlie Schneider,
Here.
Andy Skilling, here, and Dave Dyer.
Here. I see Chris just left. Okay, we have a forum to conduct business. Next item on the agenda is agenda order approval revision. Is there anything for tonight?
I just had 2 questions. I don't know if anybody else, sorry, Christine.
Yes, it is.
Just curious in regards to mask mandate. The documentation that was there from Amy said discussion item and it's already an action item. So just curious as to where that changed or why or who or just some background would be great.
Check, all right, wow. The request that was received from Mr. Earl Swanson said discuss and vote on a mask mandate. So the vote would have to be under the action agenda. The action agenda does allow for discussion also, so that would be the proper place.
And then my second question, is there a reason why we took any kind of COVID report update off of the discussion item?
We haven't had a COVID report update, I don't think regularly this school year. The plan itself had been on the agenda a number of times. We certainly can add that if that's something the board would like. My understanding was that the board wanted to spend more time on other issues, so I have not been preparing a COVID report.
Where would you like to have us ask our questions on? So then I would like to propose that we have some sort of opportunity as a group to be able to ask questions. I don't know. if you-
Under the discussion agenda?
Yes.
My concern kind of ties in with that too, because we don't have it listed on the agenda. So it wasn't published. However, we're going to be discussing some very important things, and it's not listed on the agenda anymore for us to discuss. And there's not any updates as far as the dashboard and all that other good stuff on there as well.
I would suggest that, the K-12 mask mandate is a COVID issue. I think it would be appropriate to have discussion under that agenda item. The board receives the agenda on Thursdays, and if the board members have concerns about it, I certainly encourage you to let either me or Dave know, and we can, make modifications as need be. But I think it would be within the spirit of the open meetings law to discuss a fairly broad aspect of COVID-related issues under the K-12 mask mandate, since it is directly related to COVID.
Okay, moving on to recommendations and accommodations, we have none. Okay. Community communications. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the board during the community communication item listed on the agenda. This is the time to air concerns, express your opinion on issues. There should be no negative personal attacks against any individuals, including staff, board members, or administrators. Please indicate if you'd like a member of the board to, or the administration to respond to your concerns. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and municipality where you live. One thing I would like to ask, and I've had numerous people that have talked to me about it, is that if you're speaking to the public tonight under community communications and covering issues that, I know the mask mandate, this is the 4th time it's been on the agenda. If you could try not to rehash stuff that's been discussed before, it would be great. Appreciate that. But I understand everybody has the right to speak as well. So, okay, I'll take the speakers in the order that they were turned in. What is the board's pleasure on the written ones? I have a pretty healthy stack on here. I'm not sure we're going to get through all the ones that were turned in. Or is the board okay if we read the written ones are added into the record and not read out loud at the meeting? Clint?
I would be okay with that. I think the proper way to maybe save on time would be to at least list off who we received them from and whether or not it was for or against a certain topic.
I don't have the for or against.
And maybe that's something we do for future reference, or we maybe add that as a policy, but I think it'd be nice to list off who's entered the record in favor or against a certain topic.
I'll list who
Registered.
registered, and then, like I said, it will be there for public access as far as under the board docs, so. We did receive communications from Tiffany Taggart, Alexander Hall, Julie Bendel, Ryan Jones, Jacqueline Arnold, Christine Woodward, and Nicole Trainer. And the 7 that we received. Okay, our first speaker for tonight is Amy Zuber Seguin. On deck will be Tara Ellison.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Can you hear me?
You are on.
So quiet. All right, so many of you know me, and if you are familiar with me, or perhaps the area genealogy of ed teachers, you know that I am from Mondovi. So up until recently, Mondovi was known as home of the Buffaloes, where Martin Transport is based out of, and a local NFL great who broke his leg spectacularly in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, Mondovi right now is in the news for the death of a student who contacted me. During that illness, the board in Mondovi, much like our own board, has voted for kind of a science optional health. You can opt into the science, but you can also opt out of that. And that student's death could very easily be related to that. And I know the board in Mondovi. I probably know them better than I know many of you. I've never seen any of your parents yell at you, or you've never played Little League with my brother. But I know that board that that's not their intent, is for students to get sick and to die related to things going on in the school. And I'm hopeful that that's not our intent here. As a staff member in the district, I need you to know that we're in a really untenable position. We have parents who want to opt into the science, whose kids are at risk every day of becoming infected from those that are. And to balance the desires of both of those opposite sides, to balance the safety of the kids in our class, and to try to provide instruction on top of that with all of the other issues we have to face in the classroom, it's placing a huge burden on many of us. It's really, really difficult to be in the classroom right now and to take the board's directive and to do the things we need to do. I've heard numerous staff say, well, if you don't care anymore about prioritizing getting kids in education, because that is a little bit what it feels like to some of the staff. I know that's not your intent, but I don't know that you know how bad it is getting for those of us who are actually in the classroom and day. So what I'm doing tonight is I'm asking you as a parent of a child community, as a staff member who doesn't know how to balance all the demands of the family, to please opt back into the science and follow the recommendations of our national, our state, and our local health recommendations. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tara Ellison. On deck will be Tanya Stoff.
Hi, my name is Tara Ellison. I live at N5028 558th Street in Menomonie. I'm a parent in the district and the district meeting specialist. I'm standing here tonight fully aware of how all 9 of you have voted for the last year and a half. I know exactly how you voted for the health and safety during this whole entire pandemic. I may not change my tonight, that's not my intent. I'm pretty sure that can't happen. But I'm here to be heard because anyone who knows me knows that I just need my thoughts expressed to sleep at night. I'm here to take with you to listen to the infectious disease experts and reconsider universal masking. And at the bare minimum, universal masking for our youngest children that don't have the choice. I myself have had a doctor's restriction for the school district. I've been able to do my job last year virtually. I'm 31 years of being a diabetic. Okay? So I was able to fulfill my job, but virtually through the ASC. I was super excited to get back into the buildings this year and do what I love, working with the kids and the teachers and coach. I'm still not allowed because the students aren't masked. I can work with teachers because we have a vaccination rate, but I'm not allowed into our buildings unless those students are masked. So I'm here to plead with you. This is just something to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, thoughts? On that, Michelle Dupree?
Hello, my name is Tanya Scott. I reside at N6931, 513th Street, Menomonie. I am coming to speak with all of you today as an educator in our district. I teach third grade and also as a parent to 4 children who attend school at Menomonie. I want you all to know how COVID and how some of these policies that you have all voted for is affecting me and my classroom and my students. We've been in school for 19 days. 7 of those days, I have had to be out of the classroom quarantined, not because I'm sick, not because my children are sick, but because of the daycare in which one of my children attend, somebody was sick there, which prevented further education and care for my child, which pulled me from my classroom. I have had numerous students, some of my students have only been in school for a week out of those 19 days. I cannot do my job, and my students are not going to see the success and growth in academics if we cannot keep them in the classroom. So I am asking you to please reconsider the mask mandate from optional to required. And I'm also asking you to please adhere by the CDC guidelines in contact tracing and deliberation.
Thank you. Michelle Dupree? On that, Carrie Davis.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dupree, and I am a community member, a mother of 4 Menomonie graduates, and also the district math coach. This is my 31st year working in the field of education. 31st year, I know I look way too young for that. In those 31 years, I have seen referendums come and go. I've seen school closures on the docket. I was in New York as a teacher when the towers fell, and I had to put children on a school bus not knowing if their parents were alive or not. I've seen a lot in 31 years. Never have I attended a school board meeting to address a concern in all 31 years. This is my first time. That is how serious I take this. Our first and foremost priority as a school district should be the health, safety, and well-being of our students and our staff. Our students have the right to a safe learning environment. We're denying them that right now. Our current reality of optional masking, optional quarantining has created a perfect storm. I go to work every day as a cancer survivor, feeling like I'm stepping into a petri dish. As you've heard from one medical professional after another, this is not safe. It's not safe for our children, it's not safe for our staff, it's not safe for us even emotionally. Anxiety is through the roof. We can do better. We have done better. We did better last year. Last year's school board voted better to protect our children. We have an obligation to do better now. I urge you to reinstate universal masking and pay particular concern to the health guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Davis? Sarah Anderson is on that.
My name is Carrie Davis, and I am a parent here in the SDMA. I have 5 children. We are in school here, and one is a 3-year-old who goes to Scout, the Child Services Center Scout. When the masking survey was sent out in August, I was on the same page as the majority of the community, and I opted for optional masks. Since that, my thinking has changed. My 3-year-old and I were just released from quarantine on Saturday because he and I both tested positive for COVID. We tested positive on Tuesday, September 14th, and I do believe that this was an exposure that I've had at work. This caused a chain reaction in our household and in our community. My three children, my three older children are now on their third week of quarantine. The classroom in which my 3-year-old attends at UW South has been shut down, which in turn has caused those families to also seek childcare, some in which are our own staff members at school. My husband has now tested positive for COVID and is unable to go to work. This has caused financial hardship for us. He does not receive paid leave. So he is now missing, work because of exposure that I had at my job. Not to mention that now my older children are now on extended quarantine because my husband was positive here. I'm so sad at how divided this has made our community, and I'm not seeking division by any means. I just want you to have a little background on how, like, this is affecting and touching, like, the real lives and the real community members and what this ripple effect has had. Because I think we hear stories, but we don't always know if those stories come from, you see it on the news, does it really happen to real people? And it's happening, and it's been a tough run for my family, and I feel like it has been, it is a result of the workplace, and in all honesty, I am not going to do this, but I have had somebody reach out to me offering a fully funded lawyer to pursue litigation with the school district. That is not, I'm not doing that, that is not my intent, that's just not who I am, but it's something. Just know that is happening.
Thank you, Sarah. Carrie, I'm sorry. Sarah Anderson. Allison Bauer is on that.
Sorry, Sherry.
You can take her at all.
Can you hear me okay? Good evening, my name is Sarah Anderson. I live at 1008 River Heights Road. I am mom to 3 kids who attend school in the district, two at River Heights, one at the middle school. Not only my parent, but I am a second grade teacher at River Heights. I appreciate having the opportunity to share my perspective as a classroom teacher. I hear people trying to compare this year to last year, and I am really struggling to find a way to compare that. Last year we were 60, this year we were 3 last year we were math, this year masks are optional. Last year we were in our cohort all day. This year we are not. Last year students and staff quarantined for 14 days after they were close contact. This year that's become optional. Last year we had building subs, this year we do not. We've been pulling staff actually from around the district in order to cover our absences in our building. Last year was definitely a challenge, but I will say to you, I knew the guidelines. We were 6 feet, we were masked, we quarantined, we were close contact. We were cohorted. I could do my best last year to focus on academics and the social emotional needs of our students. This year, those guidelines have become very wishy-washy. Because of this, my experience this year, I haven't known from day to day how many students will be in my classroom because of optional quarantine. In the last week, I've had 5 kids, 9 kids, 8 kids, 10 kids, out of 21 students. Not only am I preparing lessons for my classroom, I'm preparing lessons for students to complete at home and gathering materials for students who are home to pick them up. They don't get picked up. The activities I create and put on Seesaw on our platform for K2, they're not being completed. As these students start to return to school, how am I catching everyone up? It is not even October yet. This is a challenge, and this is not sustainable. Professional learning communities, that's vital. That is a term we use in our district all the time. Staff members, we look at multiple data points, we ask the experts, we work together to serve our students. We pull resources and staff from the whole building to help support our students in whatever they need. When something isn't working, we come back together, we look at the data, we make a change. We try something new until we find something that works. There was a survey that was put out in August. People wanted optional masks. Let's check the dashboard. Let's check in with the experts. Let's work together. It seems that we tried optional masks and it's not working. Something needs to change. Please reconsider masking our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Bauer. On deck, Brianna Craig.
Hi, I'm Allie Bauer. I reside at 904 Valentine Road in Menomonie. I have two kiddos that both attend school in Menomonie. And please reinstate masks, K-12. Thank you.
Thank you. Brianna. On deck, Kelly Sandberg.
Hello, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Brianna Baker. I'm a fourth grade teacher at River Heights. I live in Eau Claire. I'm here tonight to ask you to listen to our concerns regarding COVID-19 and the safety of the staff and children in our care. Masks need to be required in our schools, and a mandated quarantine needs to be reinstated. If you look at last year, we were able to keep things under control. Fewer children and staff were out sick. I myself never had to take a sick day or get a COVID test all last year. There were certainly challenges, but nothing like the ones we're facing today. One of the many challenges we're facing in our classrooms is the expectation that we're be both virtual and in-person teachers. Last year, we were guaranteed that we would not need to make these accommodations. This year, there has been no directives about what is expected of us. I've had a positive COVID-19 case in my classroom, and I've had to use all of my time to accommodate those students rather than use my time for regular lesson planning. Additionally, I was out sick earlier last week, and even during my recovery, I was asked to create work for a student who was also out sick. Those impacts of challenges we're facing today is detrimental to our ability to teach and to our students' ability to learn. 2 weeks ago in our building alone, 38% of students were out sick. Several teachers were out sick. We're struggling to find substitute teachers because they don't want to get sick. This is not sustainable. If the intent is to keep students in school and have teachers capable of teaching them, then preventing this illness should be our #1 priority. The Center for Disease Control recommends that given new evidence on the Delta variant, we recommend universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to all K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. Why are we not following these guidelines? What are you basing your decisions on that disprove the panel of 120 experts at the CDC, as well as health departments across the country? Why are we endangering the lives of every member in this community? With the sheer number of teachers here tonight, it is extremely evident that we need to think about the right decision for the safety of everyone involved. It is a huge concern to me that the school board is not prioritizing the health of students and staff at the school, that they're supposed to be making decisions in the best interest of. This is not an issue about politics, it's an issue about safety. If you truly care about the students in this community, then you need to be making decisions in their best interest. This isn't to protect lives, families, and the staff that are here to help them grow. Wearing a mask and quarantining will keep our community safe and prevent the meaningless deaths of countless of people. And that's what's truly important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Kelly Sandberg. On deck, Jen Flanders.
Hello, my name is Kelly Sandberg and I reside at 2682 Ridgewood Street, Menomonie, and I'm a teacher at River Heights. I'm here tonight to ask you to reconsider the district's optional mask and quarantine policy. As a teacher, I find that my role is so much more than simply educating students. Some days I'm a nurse and I patch up the boo-boos. Other days I'm acting as a party planner, a custodian, or a cheerleader. But today I find myself in my most important role, and that's to be an advocate for my students. When they can't stand before you to protect themselves, I feel it's my job to stand up for them. In my classroom, I have a child who's immunocompromised. And for the safety of their health, this student's family has asked that they wear a mask and only be near other students who are also choosing to wear a mask. Because of the optional masking policy in the SDMA, this puts me in an unthinkable position. A position where I'm needing to segregate students in my classroom. One side of students who are masked and another side of students who are not. Not ever in my life did I think that I would be forced to segregate my students based on what they wear. But the district has given me no other option. We're not being an inclusive community for all. With an optional mask policy and an optional quarantine policy, we're only choosing to benefit a few. During the last school year, not once did I witness any student struggling to wear a mask. I never had a child argue or push back when asked to pull their mask over their nose. Everyone can wear a mask, and everyone can stay home if they come in contact with someone who's contracted this disease. More and more, we're seeing young children contract COVID. And just last week, a student in Buffalo County passed away from complications related to this virus. They also had underlying health conditions, just like so many other students in our district, and just like the students in my classroom. I fear that with the current policies that we have in place, Dunn County is headed down the same path. In my 6 years in the STMA, I have always been proud to be a part of this district. I've admired the STMA's willingness to ask for staff input and keep our students' best interests at the forefront. But for the first time in my career, I don't feel proud. For the first time, I don't feel heard, and I don't feel respected, and I don't feel that mine or my students' safety is coming first. We need to be a community for all, and the only way that I can see that happening is by requiring masks to be worn by all students, teachers, and staff, and to reinstate a safe quarantine process. I am asking you to please think about what's best for everyone in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Flanders. On that, Abraham Smith.
Jen Flanders. I was going to read this all to you, but I think it's more important to remind us all that are sitting here that people die of flu every year, also asthma, also heart disease, and masks are harming our children. Here's a list I was going to read to you. That's a short list. I also sent you all an email on a document that I have that has 75 links. That's a short document. That tells you, that has more information on the consequences of wearing masks, especially to our children. Here's another list. I'll give it to you when I'm done and let you read it yourself. Also, you guys are all sitting 6 feet apart. I was trying to think of a solution to this without having to come here and say, usual. So how about if you take your COVID money and actually do something to promote a healthy immune system in students, considering their survival rate is over 99.999%. How about if you give parents and guardians the option of a vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc combo that can be given upon arrival in their classroom, much like a breakfast option or when kids used to be given a toothbrush to brush their teeth in the morning. You do have a doctor sitting right here. Have you consulted him? Or would you consult him? That immune protocol, when I gave you the right to talk, please be quiet. That immune protocol wouldn't cost much, and then you would have enough left over to give the kids something constructive to do, like giving them the means and resources to find a solution to the disgusting body of water in the middle of this town called Lake Menomonie. Bringing life and cleanliness back to that eyesore would benefit the community for years to come. When you claim falsely that masks will protect you from a virus, which you should all know because you're supposed to be educators, that mask legally becomes a medical device. It is illegal for you to demand or for you to require anyone to use a medical device, which brings me to my last page, federal regulation against mandates. Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations states that Americans in a clinical study must give their written consent to any medical treatment, such as a vaccine or wearing a medical device. Since vaccines gain licensure from the FDA by passing through 3 out of 4 safety trials, the side effect ratio is never truly known until the vaccine is used widely by millions. This also goes for medical devices such as masks. According to Title 2150.
Thank you, Jen. 3 minutes goes fast.
Thank you.
Abraham Smith. On deck, Victoria Johansson.
Hello, Abraham Smith, town of Menomonie. Whenever we make judgments in difficult, uncertain times, we really have to think through when we're going to reconsider what we know. In June, I was sure we were through this. We were all with friends, we were having parties, it was like, wow, we got through this. And things have gotten harder and harder since then. Whenever we make hard decisions, it's important to reevaluate as we get new information, the situation develops in unexpected ways. So I just want you to ask yourself, what are your criteria for reconsidering the decision you made in the past? What benchmarks or thresholds are out there in your mind that will let you look back and say, maybe we should try something else? I can tell you what mine are. So right now, I'm choosing to wear a mask. I'm advocating for the K-12 system to have universal masking. But I'm happy to change that view if, for example, no one dies of COVID in this county for, let's say, 2 weeks. Okay, I'm like, okay, we got, that's pretty good. But just since last week, 2 more people have died. Previous week, another 3 people died. This is really serious. And, things are bad in a way that's measurable and observable. And when we get new information, even if things don't go the way we hoped or we thought they might, we should look back and reconsider and think about if there's other things we could try that might work a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria. On deck, Jessica Green.
Hello, board and community members. I am a teacher in the district. In my time here, I've been fortunate enough to work at different grade levels and placements. I've met so many families that have changed my life, kids that are forever in my memory and that I have enjoyed watching grow up. My first class that I ever taught is now in high school, and I got to see them in middle school because I was in it. That's where I was working at the time. And it's been such a pleasure to work with all those children and be a part of their lives. I'm even still friends with a lot of parents on Facebook, and some of these people have different opinions than I do, and that's okay. People are allowed to have their opinions, and I have a right to be heard too. I think what confuses me most about the current situation is I feel like you have forgotten that we too are people who are a part of your community, not just people you employ. We have a right to be heard and to be protected in our place of employment. I'm a mother of 2 small children, a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. The night you decided not to contact trace and to basically make quarantine optional, I cried. I cried because you took away what felt like my last safeguard, and I was afraid that doing what I love and what I've always wanted to do of teaching is going to cost someone that I love. But you never know how COVID will affect someone. It could show with symptoms like a cold, it could show with no symptoms at all, or it could be deadly. I implore you to look at us as individuals and as human beings who are just trying to protect those we love, just like you are. I would never ask you to vaccinate. I understand some people don't trust the vaccine and therefore don't want it in their bodies or their children's bodies. I understand that. However, what I'm asking you is to meet me halfway. Please put mandatory masking back into effect and make quarantine not optional. We are people just like you, trying to protect our families and the people we love. Currently, I don't feel safe at work. I'm masked every day, but I have seen how much spread is occurring with masking being optional. We have lost sight of what's important. This decision isn't political. It's about people, empathy, and being supportive. I don't care about your political stance. What I care about is my coworker who has to convince themselves out of their car every day because they survived COVID the first time and aren't sure that they could again. We're the one who beat cancer but now has to worry about catching COVID. I care about my children who are too young to be vaccinated but could be protected even the littlest bit by following these CDC guidelines. I'm a person just like you, and I'm asking you to please reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board, we have 4 left. You want to finish them? Any objections? Okay, Jessica Graham. On that, Monica Barrier.
Hello, my name is Jessica Graham, and I both reside and teach here in Menomonie. Please mandate masks. We're only 1 month into school, and staff are already exhausted. I never know when I wake up if I'll be doing my job or subbing somewhere else. I don't mind subbing in an emergency situation that couldn't be foretold, but this is an emergency we had an opportunity to address. We're all pulling together to make it through the day because that's what teachers do. But it's hard and it's stressful and we need to do better. By not quarantining or masking, we're succeeding in keeping more of our students in school, but the cost is having a different sub every day. Student teachers taking over classes before they even get to practice their lessons, principals filling in classrooms, interventionists and ELL services unable to be provided to our most needy kiddos with any kind of fidelity because they're subbing. Exposed students who are coming back to school before we've even had a chance to see if they develop symptoms. Please mandate masks for our youngest students who haven't had a chance to be vaccinated yet. It's a small thing that can make a huge difference for both the staff and the students. Thanks for listening and for your consideration.
Thank you. Monica. On that, Aaron Vacy.
Monica Barrier. My name is Monica Barrier. I'm from Menomonie. So I'm a philosophy professor, and today I'd like to talk about mask mandates from the perspective of ethics and civil liberty. One of the things we can all agree on is that freedom is important. In my philosophy classes, we often talk about public dilemmas, things like abortion policy, gun rights, and of course, mask mandates. These issues are extremely difficult to resolve, and the reason they are hard is that they result from clashes between fundamental values. In the case of mask mandates, we have the right to health freedom on the one hand, and on the other hand is the freedom from harm due to other people's actions. Both values are important. And good people on both sides can reasonably disagree about where to draw the line. The infuriating thing about rights and obligations is that they're not absolute. If they were, ethics would be a whole lot easier, and I'd be out of a job. Rights are not absolute precisely because they occasionally come into conflict with one another. In a free society, everyone is entitled to as much freedom as is compatible with a similar degree of freedom as everyone else. In practical terms, what this means is that you're allowed to do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't bring harm to another person. No one has the right to sicken or endanger the life of another person. But if only it were just this simple. The debate here is complicated because anti-maskers can appeal to an equally important principle, which is this. It is unacceptable to require one person to take on an additional risk for the sake of others. This fundamental principle is often cited against mask mandates because of the concern that masking might pose a risk to the wearer. However, time and again at these meetings, we've had medical doctors stand up and affirm that there is no evidence to suggest that this is true. Masks do not cause sickness, they prevent it. For the handful of people who legitimately cannot wear masks, exceptions can be made. That doesn't mean we cannot require most people to mask up. As a person who teaches ethics for a living, I can confidently say that mask mandates do not pose a risk to civil liberties. On the other hand, not passing a mask mandate does. It's time to pass that mandate.
Thank you. Aaron, on deck, our final speaker will be Kathleen Neiman.
I'm Aaron Vacy, town of Springbrook. I have 2 kids here, school district. And, one thing that's important to me, the mask, no mask, I'm obviously a non-masker, as I'll just call it. We're not even touching the Pledge of Allegiance in elementary school right now. Last year we didn't. They go outside for recess with a mask on, or we can't say the Pledge of Allegiance. We have teachers sitting down during the Pledge of Allegiance. That's ridiculous. So, a lot of these people that are here say, well, we need a mandate, but it's not a violation of my freedom. It is a violation of my freedom. It's my choice. It's my kids' choice. And my kids have a voice. I hear it every day. I don't want to wear a mask. If you put the mask mandate on, I'll remove my kids from school. All you people want to talk about masks and your science, but you only want to listen to one type of science, and that's what you choose to hear. If your vaccinations worked, your non-surgical masks worked, none of you would be getting sick from the kids not wearing masks.
Yeah.
Last year, I had a teacher that came right out and told me she had high anxiety with my student's teacher. And my feeling is if you're that anxiety over teaching through COVID, maybe you should be a virtual teacher. Not to have to get kids in trouble every day of the week because their mask won't blow their nose when others said it has to be above your nose. And those people that want to wear N95 masks that are not form-fitted to their face, because they haven't had one form-fitted to their face, after 20 minutes, that mask has lost 20% of its reliability. So I'm all for keeping masking optional. It is a choice, it is freedom. You get to choose to wear a mask if you want to. If your kid doesn't respect you enough to wear a mask, that's not taught at school, that needs to be taught at home. Thank you.
Hold your applause. Thank you. Science teacher, Kathleen.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Raymond. Do you understand me through my math? No? I was trying to hold it. Is that better?
It's better.
It's blocked, and it's got a liner, so it's a little hard to understand. My name is Kathleen Raymond, and I'm the pastor at First Congregational United Church of Christ here in Menomonie. And at our congregation, we reopened our worship on July 11th. Over 90% of our members are vaccinated. Since reopening worship on July 11th, we keep very strict protocols about everyone masking and physical distancing in worship in our fellowship time. Unless people want to go outside, then they can remove their masks and socialize with each other. Kids over 2 years old are expected to mask in our programs for them. If their mask slides down below their nose, our minister for children, youth, and families just says, oh, gotta get that mask back up, and it's not a problem. And we do all of this because our central value as a religious community is love of neighbor. It is our responsibility to show care for all who come within our walls, regardless of their vaccine status. So most of us are wearing masks more than anything to protect those who come among us who are not vaccinated. Whatever your religious or ethical beliefs, caring for the common good, caring for those outside our immediate circle, and protecting the general welfare is a widely held value. It is not unique to one church, one religion, or any religion at all. I will admit, and this is a moment to admit it, that masking can be a pain. But it is the easiest way to reduce the spread of an aggressive and dangerous illness. Kids, in my experience, I'm a grandma, so it's in my family as well as in my church, do not feel burdened by masking if the adults around them are matter-of-fact about it. They treat it like they treat any other rule or obligation. Sometimes they resist. Mostly, it's no big deal. We know about kids that when limits and regulations, requirements are clear, they are less anxious and they can thrive. They like to have clear rules. When directions are fuzzy, they're anxious they're uncertain how to behave, they start acting out, they push back. Kids cannot learn and teachers cannot teach if the rules are unclear and if people are getting sick in droves. The best way to keep in-person learning available and effective is for everyone in our schools to be masked.
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone tonight for being respectful. We got through somewhere 15 or so, somewhere around there. So I appreciate that on both sides. So we're going to move into the rest of our agenda. One thing I would ask is we're going to be discussing the mask mandate. When we get into that, please, to be honest, if the audience is quiet and just let the board debate, it'll go better for a freer debate and a more open debate. So I appeal to everyone that when we get into that to be helpful with the board that way. So, okay, we'll move on. Item 2A, we have no personnel consent agenda items. So we'll move right into action item, which is 3A, approve K to 12 mask mandate. Is there a motion to approve? Amy, is there a second? You. Chris? Okay, discussion. We'll start with you, Amy, since this was your agenda item.
Certainly. I think what I wrote.
Is your mic on?
It's not picking you up.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think what I wrote and what I put in the agenda is pretty self-explanatory. We've heard from a number of people tonight, a number of teachers, community members, and from what I was able to see, there were 2 people that just said that they were to keep masks optional, the rest were not. This is serious business. I think that if things have gotten worse since the last 2 times we voted, I know my board is not, some of my board members are not happy that I put that there, but I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry, really. I don't mean to be. This is my responsibility as a board member to make sure that our students, even the students and the children of our board members and all of you that do not optional masks, all of you, I just feel it's necessary to help protect our community. There were 2 deaths of students. Can it happen in Menomonie? Yes. And if we don't do something now, it's going to happen. And then what are you going to do, board members, rest of you board members? Is that what it's going to take for you to understand how serious this issue is? One more thing. I work at UW River Falls. We have 5,000 students and, I don't know, probably 1,000 staff. They have a mask mandate in all buildings on campus. We have students that have never complained or concerned about it in any sense of the word. They do it because, number one, they want a good education. They do not want to have it online. They handle it just well. We all handle it really well. Also, just to let you know, that our university has a 2.86% infection rate right now. Pierce County, which is where UW River Falls is located, has a nearly 8% infection rate. That goes to show you that on campus, we are doing our job. And we do our job in Menomonie. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Chris?
Okay, I guess it would be a good time to remind us all that we are a deliberative body that are elected to make decisions regarding the health and welfare of our students in the district. And that oftentimes this means that we have to make unpopular decisions. If anybody ran for school board because they want to become more popular, you are an idiot. What I can tell you is that the deliberation on the school board has been less than satisfactory. We haven't responded with explanations as to our judgment, and as to our reasoning behind a vote either for or opposing masking. If there is a reason why our students are safer by effectively lacking all leadership whatsoever and doing nothing, please explain what that is. This can't be a question of parental choice, because this is about a public school system. You don't get to opt into the conditions that keep students safe. This is not an optional aspect of our public school system. It's the first step that we have to provide for our staff and for our students. And so if you cannot articulate why our students and staff are more safe by not having any mitigation measures whatsoever, then as a deliberative body, without absence of any evidence or any reasoning, you have to vote for masking. I'm sorry, but that's what we're here to do. If you can explain how this works, which you can't, then I'd be happy to hear that. But so far, leadership on the board has been lacking. We have members that sometimes vote for masking, sometimes don't. We have members who Google questions to ask our experts rather than coming prepared. We have explanations that the reason why we're going to try this is because I've got a buddy in Slinger who did this. We've got people who use party platforms as a method of explanation as to how we make a stance on things during a pandemic. And these are unsatisfactory. So if you're going to vote against masking, now is the time to make it explicitly clear as to why and how this is keeping our students and our staff and our community more safe by doing nothing.
Thank you, Chris. I guess I'll take that cue. So we'll start off. Amy, you made the remark that River Falls at 2.86 infection rate with full masking in the university. Right now in the SDMA, we're at 2.03%.
Please stop.
You're talking
I got a lot of stuff to get to. So, we talked about COVID rates in neighboring schools and some of that. I'll try to get to that. If not, this time with the next segment. So in 2020, we had twice as many deaths from the flu in the U.S. among children as there was from COVID. And not any deaths too many, but we're not taking strong mitigation measures against the flu and some of these other things. One of the things that Dr. Zadowski shared with the board last week was safety rates of death and dying in a fire, choking to death, a lot of other things, suicide. 1 in 88 students was, 89 people in the U.S. was the possibility of dying from suicide. There's been a lot of criticism of our optional quarantine policy that we put into place 2 weeks ago. On Wednesday, the Surgeon General of Florida made that the law of the land for Florida. It's optional for parents. It's basically the exact same thing that our district is doing. Along with Chippewa Falls, River Falls, New Richmond, I'm not sure about Hudson, I think Rice Lake. Many of them have the same quarantine policy that we have in place. There's, if we talk about in-district COVID cases, right now Menomonie is, as of Friday, we're at 61 total cases in the district, or 61 student cases, 64 total, out of 3,267 students. River Falls, which has been mandatory masking from the start, has 82 student cases for 3,500 students. Hudson, which switched to mandatory masking, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure the exact date. It's a rated chart, but they're in 123 student cases, but they have 5,400 students. New Richmond is an optional masking school, about 3,283 students, so almost the same size as us. They have 37 student COVID cases, optional masking. Chippewa Falls, 4,730 students, they're at 81 student cases. I'm out of time on this segment, so we'll get to more next time. Other discussion, Amy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. You know, your statistics are fine, you know, you can say that and everything, but there's also other unintended consequences as well. We hear from our teachers. They can't teach. We can't keep our kids educated. That's most important. We need to educate our kids. How can we educate our kids when there's a revolving door? Also, think about the medical community. There's hardly any beds left for people that are sick. If you break your leg, you may have to just be sent home with an ice pack. So there are a lot of unintended consequences besides what's happening in our schools. It's a matter of safety and health. We also have many students who are immune compromised. Some are teaching their kids at home because they can't bring their kids to school because of the immune compromise. Those are special needs kids. That's breaking the law. They're not in a place where they can have a free, appropriate instruction in a most restricted environment. You just watch. There may be some lawsuits that are going to be filed. And then we're going to be in big trouble because a lot of our money is going to be going to those kinds of things instead of the education of our students. And you can put me down, you can laugh, you can threaten to recall me. I won't be intimidated. I care about every one of our kids. And I care enough to make sure that we keep them healthy and safe, and our staff being able to work and educate our kids.
Thanks, Amy. Anybody else on the board?
Yeah, I would just point out a couple things. I'm not gonna give tons of statistics. I was kind enough to share with reading materials this morning, six pages of stuff, because I don't think it's appropriate to try and dump that on people in a meeting. So I think the takeaways of that is that when we started to make a decision about what this plan looked like in July, we were at 66 cases per 100,000 in Dunn County. That's very different than where we're at 2 weeks ago when we changed the quarantine plan at 574 per 100,000 in Dunn County. And the last data on 9/21 was 886 per 100,000 in Dunn County. Barron County is sitting well over 1,000. There is more COVID around, period. There's more COVID. People have died in the last few weeks, certainly. We are seeing spread in our classrooms at the elementary school, which we did not really see last year. We had 2 or 3 cases of what Dr. Zadowski shared last year. And now we have a more contagious variant. We've already had 7, 8 somewhere clusters in classrooms that the virus is more easily spreading in the classroom. So again, we can argue about vaccines, but my ethical concern with kids who cannot have the choice of vaccine right now is that fact. They can't have the vaccine right now. So what I would like to see this board do is find some compromise that would at least give those kids masks in the classroom until they have that ability and right to make that choice. Because we tell them they have to be at school, right? By law, you have to come to school. And so that's my biggest ethical concern. My daughter's a senior, she's vaccinated, 50% of the seniors are vaccinated. We're not seeing clusters of spread right now. So some data came out this morning as well. You're 3.5 times more likely to have an outbreak in a school with no mask versus those with. The data about surrounding counties, we have to remember that one thing does not always cause the other. I can't tell you why those numbers are what they are. I can't tell you what their distancing is. I can't tell you if they have better airflow. I can't tell you if the county public health nurse in those counties is ordering more tests, because if you test less, you'll have less results. And if you have less results, you're comparing apples to oranges with the percentage of people testing positive because there's less tests. So, I think my message is perfect would be great. I don't know that we have support for perfect, but I would like something better than we have today.
Thanks, Carol. Any other board members?
Dave,
Cliff?
take a little bit. I'm sorry, you basically stole most of what I was going to talk about, because I've been looking at comparative districts, trying to make the best decision I can. One of the things that's been very frustrating is that it's been very difficult to get information on this. I requested information from our district administrator and also 6 others around. And I understand it's hard to track this information and figure out, but some of the things I was looking for was, one, actually Carl brought up, is how many tests are being done, because that makes a big difference in the numbers. When we start looking at what one county's doing with versus the other, it's apples and oranges. We don't know. The other big ones, when we start talking about masking and vaccination, is I wanted to know how many of our positive student and staff cases in our schools were masked versus unmasked. Because that makes a big difference when we're being asked to put masks on our kids and take away that choice from people to decide whether or not they want to do it or not. How effective is it? And like I said, I talked to 7 different administrators and none of them could give me that information. My second part of that was, I wanted to know how many of the positive student and staff cases in our schools were vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I mean, we see it every year with the flu. One year it might be effective, the next year it might not, and it has to do with obviously variants. And obviously we're dealing with a variant here. We're seeing a lot of breakthrough cases. No one seems to publish when these cases happen, when these people die. And any loss of life is obviously horrible, but I'd like to know the actual factual information. If someone passes away, were they vaccinated or were they not? That's how we make good decisions. We need that objective information. I understand it's difficult. I understand that administration, the medical system is all running ragged. But I'm not getting this information from public health. I'm not getting it from our schools. I don't know how I'm supposed to make a good decision on this. Change it.
Thanks, Cliff. Any other board members? Tanya?
Carl, you just said 50% of the seniors are vaccinated. How did you get that number?
I believe Joey shared the high school rate at the beginning of the year.
Yes, I shared with the entire report.
Any other questions or discussion from the board? Chris?
Sorry. Hey, Dave. I was gonna ask you if you want to continue with your second round of those before I respond to the first round. You know what I'm saying? If you would like me just to go ahead and jump in, assuming you're not going to add any more to your statistical evidence, I'd be happy to jump in now. Otherwise, I'd have you hear what more you have to say to make that a little bit more understandable to me.
I had some stuff that I wanted to sum up besides the statistical data, so you might as well go ahead.
Okay, well, I understand that we're trying to compile information so that we can make good decisions, but assembling data like that is not helpful in this situation. The question that we have to answer is like, what will slow and stop transmission? So comparing data between school districts at this early stage of the new spread, which is much more contagious and is spreading at a more rapid rate than happened last year, we don't have time to wait to compile the data that's usable. What we do know is that wearing a mask slows the spread of the virus. And it's not something we can opt into. We have half our community who don't believe that the mask works. The virus is spread, largely through droplets, as our medical advisor told us, and the mask stops the droplets, not completely, but it slows the spread. It's what we have. And there's no debating that. So the only other kind of consideration would be whether or not we can ask our community to wear masks in school. We didn't have this debate last year. We did it. This was the right thing to do. We had leadership. Some of the people that are voting against masking now not only didn't have an issue with it, but were strong proponents of masking. Our schools were more effectively run. Our teachers knew what their expectations were. Students knew expectations. And this year, we have a completely different situation. And members on this board that voted wholeheartedly for masking last year and are opposed to it without having any rational argument as to how this is making our schools more safe in the midst of the pandemic. None. So, even when Clint, when you're trying to get good data, that data is irrelevant to the decision that we're making right now. Our decision is regarding masking. We know that it works. Instead, we've got deliberation on the board that's like, somebody came up with a study that like, apparently masks don't stop the virus, but they trap CO2 and don't let oxygen in. We're not deliberating based on evidence that even makes sense.
Thanks, Chris. Dr. Zanoki?
Sure, just a few things here. First of all, I don't think it's helpful to get divisive. That's not gonna get us anywhere. And I do wanna make sure to clarify, it was said earlier that there's no mitigation happening. That's simply not true. Masks are required on buses. We do have 3 feet of distancing in all the classrooms. Our teachers and staff are doing a great job teaching hand sanitation and prioritizing hand sanitation, also respiratory etiquette, and we still are excluding symptomatic individuals. So I understand that it's not as much as what some people want, but I want to be clear that our people in our buildings are working their tails off and mitigating with what's in the plan right now. I also don't know that masks are going to be a silver bullet. The idea of compromised students, that really is a huge concern of mine as well. I'm not certain that even with masks, it's going to be a great environment for people with compromised immune systems, but I do think it would help. I'm not necessarily concerned with breaking the law. We have reviewed that, and there's probably going to be legal precedents set, but I don't see it as an issue of breaking the law in terms of what the board is doing right now. I have advocated this entire time for having masks in our schools. I do think that not having the masks makes it very difficult for us to keep our students in school. I said this a month ago that I was very concerned about the number of staff members that would be out because of quarantines, because of exposures, not only for themselves, but also for their children. We have a large number of our staff members that have children that either attend our schools or they attend daycares in our community. So that also is an impact of the masking mandate. But Clint, you asked about, how do we make a good decision on this? And I feel for that. I mean, it is hard. I mean, I was asked to put together a chart here comparing cases and exclusions and stuff, and there is no textbook for this. Districts are tracking things differently. The policies in each district are different. And I do think that last year we did a terrific job. If you do look at the numbers we were able to track, I agree with Dave that in 3 weeks, you don't see a huge difference between schools that are masked and unmasked. But I also caution the board to use 3 weeks of data that may or may not be reliable under different circumstances. I think Carl mentioned the testing differences. That there just isn't enough consistency to make a rational decision based on this data collection. So how do we make a good decision? It's tough, and there is a lot of lack of trust. And I definitely understand some of that. I wonder myself, I read every day. It's all I've been doing for, feels like 2 years now. There's a lot of things that contradict things. and it's hard to sort through it. But how do we make a good decision? I do think we have to rely on the guidance that we receive. I still trust that there is valid information coming from the CDC. I definitely think Dr. Horvath, who's here again tonight, thank you for being here. I certainly think he's going to try to advise us in what he thinks is most appropriate for the health and safety of our students and staff. I trust him. I may disagree sometimes with the health department in terms of what the best way to approach the control of this virus in our community is. But I absolutely think the health department is doing everything they can to try to be proactive in keeping us healthy and safe. This is my 8th year in the district, and I can count on one hand, probably one finger, a couple fingers, how many times the majority of the board has not supported the recommendations that I've brought forward. And we work very collaboratively in our school district. Our directors think we should have masks. Our principals think we should have masks. Our teachers think we should have masks. Our staff thinks we should have masks. And I don't want to make it seem like it's unanimous, because it's not. But it is a clear consensus that we think that the best thing to do right now for our kids and for our staff is to have masks. And again, for me, it's not even about the medical argument. I am not a medical doctor. I've read a lot of studies, and to me it makes sense, but I don't have a medical degree to say for certain that this is going to keep people safe. But what I do know as a doctor of education in trying to run our schools, that having masks on our kids and having masks on our staff will make a difference in our ability to educate our kids. I feel sick about what's happening to student achievement over the first 3 weeks of the school year. And I think it was going to be terrible no matter what we did. I think this spike we're going through with the Delta variant, I said this from the start, I don't think that there's a silver bullet to stop it. But what I do know is that I think there's things we can try to do. I think there's things we had some success with last year. And so how do we make a good decision? I think we listen to our medical advisors. I think we listen to the administrative team that we've hired. And I think that we, try to do what we can. So I continue to implore the board to consider universal masking. I would primarily ask you to consider universal masking for our youngest students until they have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. I am very pleased to say that all signs are pointing towards the possibility of vaccinations being available for our youngest students soon. I think in one of the articles I read today is the data is going to be reviewed in days, not weeks. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be available in days, not weeks, but I do think we're weeks away from having that available. And once it becomes available, I think we have a reasonable amount of time, probably about 6 weeks or so. And then I think, at that point, if the board really still thinks that, having universal masking is not appropriate, at least then the people who want to have the opportunity to have their children vaccinated would have that opportunity. I still think it's going to be a challenging year until community spread goes down. I think that's really the driver in all of this. And without a collaborative effort of our community, which we don't have, I think we're going to be in for a long haul here for a while. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Other board members, anybody that hasn't spoken yet that's interested in speaking? Angie, go ahead.
I guess I would just like, maybe this question is for Chris. How do you explain, of the numbers that Dave gave us, the two lowest schools with positive COVID numbers, the two lowest numbers are optional masking schools, and the other ones are not? How would you explain that?
I would ask the question, but I guess one thing I would caution the board is directing questions to other board members, but go ahead, it's
He
fine.
addressed that he thought that your data was not
That's
above board, so I want to ask him why he feels that data doesn't reflect the decision that Dave has made, that Dave is making a poor decision based on data that is showing the two lowest schools with positive COVID cases are mask optional, and all the rest of them have a mask mandate and they have the highest numbers.
Yeah, that's a pretty simple one, to create a false causality between two coincident events is a logical conclusion. So just because these schools have the lowest incidences of COVID does not mean that that's because they have masking optional policies in their schools. The question we're voting on is whether or not we're going to have a masking policy and whether or not masks are effective to mitigate against the spread of the disease.
That's not what I asked you for.
Okay, Dr. Sadowski, one.
Just to follow up on that, I do think that, especially when we're talking about such a short period of time, I think we have to be careful with this data. For instance, one school district has a high number of cases, but they know that there was a large event that caused spread. In fact, there was a football game where there was a delay due to weather, and the entire football team was stuck in the locker room together without masks for, I don't know if it was an hour or 90 minutes or whatever. And that led to a pretty large outbreak. Even with our own school district, we're seeing some of our schools have, one school has 0 cases so far, some have hardly any. But I think it may be more a matter of chance, and this, it's not a linear disease, I guess, is what I was, we're dealing with a natural occurring disease, but it's not a linear approach to this. So I think especially over 3 weeks, we have to be careful. Because one outbreak could skyrocket the cases, and then it might be fine for 4 weeks. We just don't know that.
Charlie.
Chris, in your first discussion, while you were throwing pretty much everyone under the bus like yourself, I suspect that you were referring to me when you mentioned that some people vote one way and then another. I did that in an attempt to come to a compromise. Because as we sit here, we're pretty much locked at 5 to 4, I suspect. And unless we come up with some sort of a compromise, we're going to go away from this evening the same way we came in. And I think that it's important that instead of smashing each other in the face, that we try to come up with ways to compromise. Otherwise, we're just going to be doing this over and over again, and we all know that what that means. And when you said that there are no mitigation measures of any kind, I feel bad. And you're discounting the very hard work of all of our staff that do a great thing every day, trying to do everything that they can. And I just think it's unfair for you to even go there. One thing that I'd like to point out is, it's been mentioned many times, masks are not forced medical treatment. There's been many cases in the country in the past year, and they've all of the courts have agreed that masks are not forced medical treatment. So, to Clint, the data for testing is available daily online. So you can know how many tests there were in the county, and how many tests were positive, and how many tests were negative by county.
Is that directed at me so I can answer Dave?
I'll wait till you.
As I said, it's going to take 5 votes to change any kind of a policy. I think we need to think about compromise rather than where we're different, and come to some sort of a commonality if we can. I'll stop there at this point.
Okay, so what I have so far, I've got, Amy has spoken twice, Chris has spoken twice, I have Charlie, Angie, myself, Clint, all one time, Carl, all once. So Tanya, Mark, Mark?
I'll speak because I feel like I have to.
You don't have to.
I was in the minority. I just find it ironic that we keep on going back, and every 2 weeks we're talking about the mask. And I'm not even going to argue that. I'm not even going to give you my opinion, because that's exactly what it would be. Last year, we had a 6-foot distance policy. And in my personal opinion, we absolutely missed the boat early in the year. And why wasn't that an option? If we can go 3 feet without a mask, or 3 feet with a mask, why can't we go 6 without one. And maybe I'm off base by saying that, but I guess I would like to see, and I know, Joe, you've stated several times that, ooh, that's millions of dollars in resources and whatever, but we've already done it. Now, I do understand also that we have more people, more students enroll, and it makes it a little bit harder and more challenging this year. But I guess I would still like to see, what does that look like? If that's the only commonality we can come to, why aren't we doing it? We keep on going back to masks, and I'm done with that. I'm sorry. Can we move forward and like these folks are saying, can we meet somewhere? Because I'm willing to do it, but not with a mask. Can we do the 6 feet? And if anybody tells me that that wouldn't help, then I guess I'm out.
Laura, thanks for the question about the 6 feet. I know I said that to the board, I believe it was last week or maybe last meeting. And you're right, it'll be well over $1 million. The big difference is that the prior year, we did have much lower enrollment, and we were able to plan ahead with having a bunch of virtual teachers hired really from the previous spring. Now this year, like someone said in our community communications, up through June, things were looking very, very good. Everyone was really excited about coming back to as normal a year as possible. And then later in July, when the Delta variant started gaining traction, it was really late. The other thing is that the candidate pools for hiring people is very, very difficult. Is it possible? It may be possible. But like I wrote to the board, you're talking about at least 3 weeks by the time you're able to hire people, and then you wonder about the kind of quality you're going to get. It is possible, but it certainly is not recommended. The other thing is, it's really hard on these kids when we change their cohorts. And, they're used to, with Mrs. Davis or whoever the teacher is. So all of a sudden, we hire teachers and we use spaces that absolutely are not even close to being designed to be meant for group instruction. And we're putting them in an area. And that was tough last year, but now with more enrollment, we're going to be using even more difficult areas. And you can see in here, you see the name tags on here. This is being used as a classroom. And this is actually a pretty decent spot for a classroom, even though, it's not even close to having a normal classroom. But our elementaries, they're pretty packed. In a normal year, even without COVID, we are pretty packed in our elementaries. The board, and I think the board's done a great job using community resources. We don't have a lot of extra room. So again, is it possible to implement a 6-foot distancing policy? It's possible. Is it a realistic option at this point? I don't think so.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, just to follow up, one thing I was gonna say also is we're also pinpointing our schools, as a community, for doing something that the community is not doing on a daily basis in the community. So I find that, again, very ironic.
That's been my biggest frustration, Mark. Because again, I think that community spread is really the number one way. And I think it's been shown to be the number one way to impact having safe schools. But all the focus has been on what we're doing in our classrooms. But we can't change that at this point. All that we can do, all that you can do as a board member is think about how do we make our classrooms safe. But we haven't put it in an impossible situation. It's not fair.
I guess, from my perspective, what was happening in the community has been a big thing for me as well. I know we've had quite a few people from South that have talked to the board, addressed us, how these things should be done in Menomonie, but in South is masked and quarantined, but yet, drive downtown about 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you wouldn't believe the number of kids that are out and about. And I was at Quick Trip the other night and just seeing them come in, group after group after group. And that kind of thing, it's really hard to control. The Delta variant, we're seeing a lot bigger spike this year, but we know Delta variant is much more contagious. And So it's different than what we had last year. It's my hope that what we're going through right now is relatively short-lived. Cases in some of the other states in the south are dropping very rapidly. I'm hopeful that that's what's gonna happen here in Menomonie. One thing I want to talk about a little bit was exclusions. I know it's very difficult for the staff dealing with kids being out and teachers being excluded and stuff like that, but just a little comparison. Menomonie, as of Friday, we had 260 exclusions. Today it was down to 240. Eau Claire Memorial on Friday, Friday was at 946 students. And in my mind, Eau Claire schools in general, in my mind, they're kind of the gold standard where they had masks from the start, they had the strict quarantine all the way through, and yet the COVID numbers, they're at 164 total cases. They have 3.2 times the number of students that we do, so they have a lot higher population. But when we were at 240 to 260 exclusions, Eau Claire's at 946 exclusions. So they're going through the same problem that we're having as far from an exclusion standpoint. Shepherd was a little bit bigger than we are, but they had 559 student exclusions on Friday. So other districts are seeing some of the same problems that we're seeing. In my mind, I'm not convinced that masking is what's going to solve it. I think that the Delta variant and what it's doing, because of the contagious spread that it has, is the biggest thing that's at play here. And I guess I'm hopeful in time that, because we're seeing it both schools that are mandatory masking and schools that are optional. And even the schools that have really good protocols in place, according to what the experts say, still have high exclusions in the student population. So I guess I've been asked to explain kind of where I'm coming from, and that's where I'm coming from.
I think that's some really good points, Dave, and I do think that even now, most of the cases we're seeing are home-based exposures. We do think there may be some exposures in our classrooms, but I do think a majority of our cases still are home-based. I still think it's difficult to compare, but Dave's right. There are some school districts that have very strict protocols, and it is really hurting student achievement. I said at the time, and I appreciate that the board did try to do something with exclusions. And, I know River Falls, for instance, they're universally masked, and they're not excluding for close contact. To me, that model makes sense. I do think we need to prioritize student achievement as a school. But I think some of those reasons that Dave listed, the fact that we can't control what's happening in the community, we can't control what the kids may or may not be doing at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, or anytime they're out of our building. The fact that we do have the Delta variant, which has been proved to be more contagious, and the fact that this is short-lived, I do think we have an opportunity here to put the masks on, to try to do what we can for a short amount of time until these vaccinations become available. And I would implore the board to do that. I think the reasoning listed fits right into it.
Any other discussion?
Can I ask where we're at with our testing program that we had originally wanted to enroll in?
Yeah, Andrew, thanks for the question. All the schools in the state of Wisconsin had the opportunity to opt into a testing program. We did opt into the program. Unfortunately, the company that we were partnered with by the state, we had no say in it, did not perform up to expectations. In fact, there were many problems at the building level, and the problems outweighed any benefits that company was going to provide for our school district. So we informed the state that we were no longer interested in working with that company. We may look at a different company if the state were still waiting to hear back. They said they were gonna give us another opportunity with a different company. But one of the reasons why I thought the testing program was important is because my understanding was that testing was not going to be nearly as available in Menomonie this year. Fortunately, testing is still very available. I still think there could be benefit, but the need for it isn't nearly what we anticipated at the end of the summer.
Amy, I should clarify, you have spoken twice, but the first time was to clarify your motion. I don't know.
This is, I know I've spoken twice, but I have a recommendation. I would really like all K through 12, but if we could come up with pre-K through 6 to mask, I could compromise that way.
Can I ask a question? Carl?
Is that clarifying?
Yes, okay. As a clarifying question then, Amy, are you considering a duration or an off-ramp for this? I think many of us here are concerned that if we agree to something, that we don't know what it looks like on the other end. When is it done? You know, so is it about when those kids can be fully vaccinated after a second shot? Is it about community burden of moderate? Because right now we're at high and flirting with very high. But question, I guess.
Sure, I can answer that. Am I on? Okay. I would think that after we could get the majority of our 4K through 6 students vaccinated, if we could. I understand that it may happen as early as October. We don't know for sure. But I think once that takes place, I'm not guessing a percentage, but I would guess that, you know, what the community wants is 70%. I don't know if we'll get there, but I would say at least 50% or more.
Are you making a motion, Amy, or an amendment to the motion?
Sure, I can make an amendment.
Can you state that, please?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Can you state that, please?
Yes. I would like to amend the motion, instead of K through 12, mandate masking, 4K through 6, because they're not able to be vaccinated yet.
We have a motion to amend it. Is there a second? Yep. Chris? Any discussion on the amendment?
Carl already kind of touched on it. I mean, obviously with this motion, we have to have a little bit more specifics on it instead of just leaving it open-ended from now to eternity, essentially. So I mean, you need to pick whatever you are going for here and nail it down, because there's no way that I'd be comfortable and open for that.
Amy, could I suggest maybe that you amend your motion to include language that would say, until those children have the opportunity to become fully vaccinated? Because if you make it to a certain vaccination percentage, I think that's going to be very difficult. But if you make, early on in the summer, there was a graduated masking policy that we had that the board had supported. And the terminology related to vaccination status was until those students had the opportunity to become fully vaccinated.
That's fair.
Chris, you from the amendment or second that?
Yep.
Okay. So the amendment then reads to mandatory masking for 4K through 6th grade until students have the opportunity to become fully vaccinated. Discussion on the amendment? Tanya?
Are we including staff or not? Just those that are not vaccinated? And I just want to say, my whole family's been vaccinated, so whomever likes to post things in regards to my business, we all are vaccinated, so I know there's a lot of times people would like to know where we are on all of this. So just to get that out there too. So back to you, Amy. My one question, yes, I want to know if teachers would have to or staff, so adults. The other question I have a big concern about, and maybe this is not the place to ask, but when you say 4K to 6 for vaccination, until they have the opportunity. So what's going to happen then when we turn around and now they're going to have the opportunity, but they don't, and it's their family choice not to? What is that going to look like?
To answer that, please, I guess that's the choice of the student. But I know in some places, unvaccinated students are tested, at least at whatever falls they are, they're tested every week. That may not happen here, but I'm just telling you I would say that I think if we're going to mask for K through 6, I think teachers should also be a good example and also be masked.
I can get around, asking adults to do that, and adults can make their own, because they're able to be vaccinated, so it's their choice. So, I can support everything up to, I don't feel comfortable asking an adult to do that.
So can I ask you, Tanya, would you change your vote if I said the teachers did not have to be masked?
Sure, perfect. I love your verbiage about it, if you have the opportunity to vaccinate, those kiddos can't be vaccinated right now. So that I totally support, the teachers can and are able to.
May I ask a question, Dr. Horvath?
Carl,
Dr. Horvath, if I'm remembering all my reading, right now the next wave of vaccines will be 5 through 12, is that correct?
That's my understanding, that's right.
So students younger than 5 will not probably be eligible in this next round of EUA approval. I think it's 5 to 12. So for pre-K, are those students that are younger than 5?
Yeah. So, maybe kindergarten.
So that's something to consider then, if we're, we don't want to build something where you have a mixed group trying to apply that policy, because then those 4-year-olds will be masked forever under that language. My other question to the group, I think, really is, we think that the CDC, we believe that they will be giving authorization in the FDA within weeks, that first shots will probably be available to those kids in October. But the what if is what if they're not. So right now, as I said, we're at high or very high case counts in the county. We have spread in our schools. We've got a lot of absences. But I feel like it would be respectful as well to have a second option that says we can relax again if this, and vaccines have, fallen off the scientific wagon for some reason. And the easiest one is probably the case rates at the county level, because we're all in this together, right? So, to say vaccines available to those kids or case rate of moderate, low, something like that.
we have a motion and a second, or an amendment. Dr. Sadowski and I were just checking, since Amy made the amendment and Chris seconded it, that it becomes a main motion in and of itself, so we don't have to vote twice on it. So rather than it being just an amendment to the main motion now, we are considering just the main motion, which is to mandatory masking for K through 6th grade.
Before we vote.
Until they have the opportunity to become fully vaccinated.
Okay. Before we vote, I will take Tanya's recommendation of teachers teachers in kindergarten through 6th grade, optional masking, if that change the vote.
Are they included in the main? Joe?
My understanding of the main motion now is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, my understanding of the main motion is that the motion is to require masks kindergarten through 6th grade students until such time as those students have the opportunity to become fully vaccinated.
Correct. And then the teachers in those, since Tanya asked, teachers in those grades, masks can be optional. Can I add that to the?
Well, I think if you just say students, I think it's covered because it's already optional for staff.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I guess I would just like to add my vote. I can't support this. My vote is no. Lots of vaccinated people are coming down with COVID, so if the purpose of this is to, in essence, prevent spread, whether they're vaccinated or not, does not make a difference to me. I also voted to support parental choice. A lot of parents made a decision to enroll their kids and not put them in virtual school based on our vote that we made in August. I resent a little bit the fact that Amy and Chris insinuate that we don't care about our children. I, in fact, do have a child in this district that I care very much about. She is not masked, and I don't support that, and so my vote tonight will be no.
Any other discussion? Mark, please. Mark?
I just have a question. Does anybody have the numbers on how many elementary kids have been hospitalized and how many have died? in Wisconsin?
Just off the top of my head, it's around 1,500, Dr. Horvath, hospitalized. And age 0 to 9, I believe 0 deaths, age 10 to 18, either 4 or 5.
What I can tell you is interpreting data that I've seen, there's been a disproportionate increase in cases in kids in comparison to the increase in cases in adults in our state. That's Wisconsin data, not Benton County data.
Yeah, grab them, Mike, Dr. Horvath, please.
Again, I apologize, I don't have the data at my fingertips, I do not, I can dig it up for you if you like. What I see is that there's a disproportionate increase in cases in children under 18 in comparison to in comparison to adults. So if you look at the curves of confirmed cases, kids go up faster than adults do. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
One thing I would just say, Mark, I think everyone here would stipulate that the number of deaths and hospitalizations has been very small in children. I would caution you and the rest of the board members to make your vote based on hospitalizations and deaths. Please also consider the impact this has on student achievement and how many kids and families are missing work, missing school because of the quarantines.
Just so you know, I am by no means basing my decision on that. I just didn't know the numbers, so I was curious because that is what we're discussing.
Can I share just one more bit of data? I don't know if I had two yet on the motion here. I want to respect the rules.
I'm going to allow it just because we changed the motion parameters to different things.
So this was shared with the board this morning through one or two correspondence we got, these two studies regarding mask use in schools. And we have to acknowledge that this is a multiple layered thing. This disease is as low spread as possible. It is distance, it is hand hygiene, it is masks, it is vaccines, all of them. And so these two studies, we're saying, oh, what do those two districts do? These are really small numbers. They're biased because they're near us. They were chosen on purpose because they have the same size as us. So these two studies, one looked at 3,142 counties with data from August, so just a few weeks ago. Those schools that had no mask requirement had a larger increase in COVID cases. And then 1,020 schools in Arizona had 191 school-associated outbreaks. Of those 191, 8.4% were schools that had had masks required since the beginning, so roughly 8%. To the extreme other end, 59% of those outbreaks were in schools without mask mandates. So we can consider, how do we know what we know? We know it a lot of ways. We know it from what happened to the guy sitting next to me who tells me what he experienced. We know it from the districts around us. And then we have another view of what's happening at a high level with 1,000 schools. And there are different kinds of information, but we have to consider the big picture too.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. Janet?
Sorry, quick question before you vote. We're voting on the motion.
The main motion, this is not.
Which was amended by people who made the original motion, so we're voting on the main motion, not on the amendment, the entirety of the motion.
This is the entirety of the motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to have Janet read the motion, just so we're very clear on what we're voting.
Okay, Janet?
Okay, no, that's all right.
Okay, the amendment is, the main motion is for available kindergarten through 6th grade.
4K, correct?
4K or kindergarten?
Oh, I'm sorry.
4-year-olds won't be in that section.
I'm sorry.
Kindergarten through 6th grade, mandatory masks until vaccinations are available for this group population. and then
So the motion,
But we're voting on the main motion first.
there's only,
Okay, through 12, correct?
no, because we amended the main motion, and you made the main motion, you made the amendment to the main motion. Therefore, we're gonna vote one time. The vote is gonna be on whether, we make masking mandatory kindergarten through sixth grade in the school district of Menomonie, and until such time as they are able to be fully vaccinated. For students only, correct. Everybody clear on that? One vote is all we're taking.
My question though, we had discussed, was there an alternate step back based on community transmission or something else in that?
That was not included in.
Okay.
Yeah. Roll call or no?
We've been sitting here so long, you might have to refresh your screen.
Would it be possible for us to take a moment? Just so that, I'm not saying discuss, just each person can think amongst themselves. This is, I don't want to rush into this, and I think some people maybe still have questions.
Let's try reopening. Can you reopen it or cancel it? Okay, just take your moment and.
Wait a minute, it's back, but it says, approved K-12 mask mandate, so it needs to be changed.
Amy said on the thing that comes up, it's K-12 on my thing. But regardless of what it says on your computer, our motion that we are taking is
Okay.
kindergarten through sixth grade.
Can I ask a clarifying question? What happens if in a week comes back and guess what? No, there's no vaccinations.
Then I would say, I don't know that we'll have them in a week, but even, let's just say 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then I think this policy would stay in place unless the board changes. And the board could call a special meeting, or we meet twice a month. Do any board members not have the vote up on their screen?
I already voted. I don't know if
Okay.
to restart it. I already voted too.
So Dave, Tanya, and Charlie. Tanya, do you have it up?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, great. Take your time.
Can I see it? I'll read it off. Okay, the motion carries by a vote of 5-4. Affirmative, voting yes for Amy, Chris, Tanya, Charlie, Carl. No votes for Dave, Clint, Mark, and Angie. Next item on the business, on the agenda, action item 3B, approve the district banking extension. Motion to approve. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Charlie, is there a second? Tanya, beat you to it. Do we have a motion and a second, any discussion? No?
The board members already received this 2 weeks ago, so unless there's any questions, the recommendation from Leah is to approve the extension.
Any questions from the board? Okay, Janet, let's start with you.
Okay, you voted up and left. This is called me. Oh, no. Good.
Motion passes by unanimous vote of 9-0. Moving on to this discussion item. Discussion item 4A, energy plans.
Energy manager Justin Shipman was not able to be here tonight due to an emergency, so we will put this on a future agenda item.
Okay, move on to item 4B, timeline. Oh, you want to skip that to the solar project, or do you want to talk?
Yes.
We are looking at a solar project at middle school, and we got the timeline in there. Hopefully, the completion of that will be sometime next year, but we'll talk about more of the next meeting. Activities, athletics, and activities report.
Mr. Mayor provided the activities and athletic report. He also, on the next agenda item, updated exhibit 371. With homecoming week, Mr. Mayor is very busy, so I told him that he did not need to be here tonight. So board members, if you'd like to have him come back and review this is a report you see every year. We can do that, otherwise I want to make sure you receive the information. Are there any questions tonight?
Could you people please leave the room if you're going to be arguing, because I can't record this.
So Carl's question was, is there anything on here that I want to point out specifically to the board? I would just say that if you're interested, you could compare it to previous years. Typically, this report comes earlier in the fall. Also, I'd like to really point out the summary that Mr. Mirren did. It's a terrific summary of last year's seasons, and just appreciate all the work that was put into this by him and the coaches.
Any other questions? Amy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I thought it was very well done. I liked the graphics.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Mr. Merritt.
Okay. Item 4D, district-sponsored student activities and organizations.
Yeah, I think I just covered that a little bit, but again, if there's any questions, please forward them on. That's all we got for tonight.
Community education report. Kale's here with us tonight, so take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I know I was supposed to be on earlier too, but you guys are dealing with a lot, so I understand. My report is a lot different than normal years too, and you guys all know why it is. So I'm not going to sit here and show you my full report. I just want to go over some brief things what happened last year. Last year, it was a hard year for everybody. We tried some online programming, which was pretty much not happening just because everybody was virtual. It was hard. So it really hurt us in regards to programming. But we kept trying it to no success. So we're starting again this fall, and we'll try again and see how it goes. But in regards to our lap swim at our facilities, that was a super successful program. We received a number of lap swimmers that enjoyed just having us open the pool and allowing them to have a means of exercise. So they were very, thank you to us for allowing that pool to be open still last year during the hardships. The other thing it created was a lot of local partnerships with different organizations just because everybody was in the same boat. Some of the things that we tried were a scavenger hunt with Explore Menomonie, a day hike with the Friends of Red Cedar, a basketball dribble contest with the Hoops Club, a bunch of hosting our monthly activities with all groups. These groups included we did a snowman build-off with the library and a triathlon with the Max Swim Club. So, it really opened the doors to a lot of partnerships last year and working with different organizations. Towards the end of the year, we opened the private swim lessons back up. And that was, again, a huge success. There is a huge demand for private swim lessons in our community. Just because Park and Rec didn't use our facilities last year for swim lessons. So a lot of people were coming to us for private swim lessons. Unfortunately, we don't have enough instructors or private instructors, so we had to turn a lot away. And I'll get to that point in a second, but again, our staff last year did an amazing job. I commend them a lot. We did not have to close one day with the last swim sessions that we were open. Due to COVID and all that, we still had people out. We were able to cover all our open swim time, or our last swim time. So that was awesome, and our staff did a great job. However, this year has been a little more challenging with the lifeguard shortage, excuse me. We missed a lot of those training opportunities last year. Pools closed, so they didn't have their jobs, their lifeguarding jobs. So they went and took different jobs. Everybody's preparing for colleges, internships. So we are losing a lot of our lifeguards. I'd say right now we're probably down to maybe 6 lifeguards. So we're trying to make it work. We're trying to keep our hours open. But down the road, that might be something where we might have to limit our hours to the facilities in regards to pools. So I just wanted to let you know. I want to thank you guys as a board. I appreciate the direction. Thank you to Joe Sadowski. Sam Hoyt was amazing to work with over sending her college, our employees that couldn't work or could work. So it was an amazing year. I know it was hard, but we got through it, and that's my brief talk to you guys. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Have you seen much uptick in weight room use with the new weight room?
For open hours to the community, not as much, but we've never really had that increase. So we're open, we're trying to get back to regular hours. October will be our first time we kind of get really back to our normal pre-COVID hours. So we'll see how that goes.
Any other questions, Charlie?
You guys did such a great job on the weight room. Encourage you to work with the other folks. Let's make the cardio room as nice as the weight room. And get the community involved there as well. I think that should be a good next step, something to think about.
And we have talked about that. That one's hard because FIAD uses that room, Dance uses it. There's so many different organizations that use that room. So we would love to have more cardio equipment, and I think it is needed, but space would be limited. So we got to figure out a space for cardio equipment.
Think outside of the box. With the room.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to our student enrollment update.
So Tony prepared this, and she's also not able to be here tonight. This has been difficult, as you all know. But I appreciate her and Nikki in the People Services Office putting this report together, also Della Lee, who helps with this report. Tony wanted to point out this is not our final September count. There's a lot of work that has to go on, especially when we have so many students missing school. There needs to be follow-up on the students that were there before the third Friday, students who were there the days after the third Friday. So they're still working on that, and the final report will be brought forward when it's possible. But you can see the number of student bodies that were here for the third Friday of September were 3,267. I still think COVID is impacting a little bit of our enrollment, but we are going to have to watch this carefully over the next few years because, as you know, much of our funding is based on enrollment. Any questions for me tonight?
Amy?
I'm just curious where it says open enrollment and open enrollment out. When do those numbers become available for this year?
Leah, we'll get those in the next couple of weeks, won't we? In October.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, move on. Achievement annual SLO update for all grades. Mr. Segman.
All right.
If you want to sit down, pull the mic, it'd probably be more comfortable. I know I'd feel more comfortable.
All right, so to start out with, this report is something that typically we bring in on an annual basis. Last school year, we did pause measurement of several of our goals as we were focusing on COVID-19 and making sure that we were meeting the needs of our students' needs in the classroom to start with. So what I don't have in this report is a report out on the goals that we would have had last year. So the SLO document that you had to review, and thank you for those who reached out with some questions. Those are the goals that individual buildings have set for this school year, and that is something that we will be spending a fair amount of time on the action steps that each building developed related to those. On a identified time frame, in some cases it's quarterly, in some cases it's by trimester. I will be meeting with building principals, and in some cases the building leadership teams to measure the progress toward those goals this school year. What you'll see is most buildings have a literacy goal. Many of them are focused around writing. They have a math goal, and some of our buildings have a social emotional learning or PBIS goal. I'm really pleased with the work that the building level teams did this year in the development of those goals. And I think all things being what they are, I think our staff will continue to work very hard toward those, and I look forward to reporting on that next school year. Because we didn't have the main SLO report like we normally would, I thought it was important that I share with you an update on screening data over the course of last school year. And I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but I want to point out just a handful of highlights. Last school year, we knew in the beginning of the year when we screened our students right away in the fall, following the statewide shutdown that happened to in-person learning, we saw decreases in student performance and student proficiency last school year. So we knew we were going to have to focus on student growth, and our staff absolutely stepped up to the challenge with that, as did our students. In the area of reading, you can see that 6 out of 12 screening grades had increases in overall student proficiency, and that speaks to growth. In the area of math, 9 of the 11 screen grades. In kindergarten is not a great thing to screen in the area of math. We focus on early diversity in that grade level, so that's why one level is 12 grades and another is 11. But 9 of 11 screen grades saw an increase in overall levels of proficiency from fall to spring. And again, that speaks to growth. As our strategic plan identifies, we do want to see improvement in the area of both literacy and mathematics. We've done some very nice positive steps to work toward that pre-pandemic and even through the last school year. Our elementary buildings have increased the number of opportunities for intervention as well as resources, and as the board, you supported the increase of some of our intervention staff. Now, at the start of the school year, we had to utilize some of those staff members in different ways. I look forward to the opportunity at the building levels for them to focus on the primary job assignment. But those staff members have been absolutely amazing in their ability to be creative and still provide some level of support for students, even when they are being told to fill in as substitute teachers. In some cases, they've been what I would call platooning a classroom, where they divide up and they're still able to meet with some of their students in high schools. So, again, my intent was to provide just some background. Our emphasis last year was on growth. To be very transparent, that's going to have to be our emphasis for several years to come. I believe, and then in the future board meeting, once the state unembargoes our state assessment data, I will come back and share that information once we can talk about that publicly. But what I will say is the growth that we saw during our year from a screening standpoint really did pay dividends for us. So I look forward to bringing that information back when we talk about that publicly, as well as our school report cards like you used to see. So at this point in time, I'll entertain any questions if you have them. But other than that, I just want to make sure that you have some background as to where we're working on students.
Okay, questions of the board?
Just a reminder, the STAR test is the one 3 times a year, right?
That's
now,
correct.
now and then the fall. Okay.
Yep, all interesting. Any other questions for Brian?
Just one quick one, I'm just opening the SLO report. For the most part, the goals, not all of them, I just kind of, the colors line up for me. In many of the areas, the goals seem to be where there might be a couple of, I can't find it. Let's say there's 3 lines of proficiency, and then the goal tended to be kind of like where one's already exceeding that, one's almost to it, and one's below it. So is there a method to that goal setting?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does. So each building, we'll set a general goal across the district as far as what we're looking for. But then each building will then go ahead and take a look at where they stand in relation to that district level goal. The method to identifying this district level goal is we've done a correlation to how students perform on our screening assessment that we do 3 times throughout the course of the school year, and how that relates to performance at the end of the year on the state level assessment. Now, we know that performance on the state level assessment is one of our measures that we use for student success. It's a very public one, and we want to make sure that we're striving towards having more students proficient than not. That is an area across the state that the state as a whole has struggled with, usually grade level by grade level. It's usually somewhere between mid-40s percent of students being proficient to the low 50s. There are very few districts that have a lot of students that are, more than 50% of students proficient. And, previous state superintendents, as well as our current one, has identified that is something that hopefully is.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Very good, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time we'll have our health insurance renewal. Yeah.
Okay, I did share with you in board docs that Medica is proposing an increase this year of approximately 10.92%, or $174,000 in overall fixed costs. But we did discuss mitigating that increase with possibly increasing our specific stop loss cost level if necessary. And in those discussions, we also talked about our high cost claims. And currently, we do have one high cost claimant that just came off our plan. And so that will affect our claims over the next, period, the next year. And then also we had several large claimants whose claims are now going down. And so we felt it best at this time. We have a healthy fund balance. We would like to monitor our claims over the next few months and reevaluate halfway through the year and then make adjustments if necessary. We don't want to increase our costs at this time if we don't need to, but yet we don't want to create a fiscal cliff either by not increasing it if we have to, and then increasing, making a big jump in 1 year. So by just monitoring our claims closely and possibly reevaluating July of 2022 to see if we need to make any increases at that time is what we're proposing.
Our limit's still 80,000 per claim?
Correct.
And then we have reinsurance for anything that would go higher. Charlie?
So you're considering then changing that 80,000 to 100 or something like that? Is that what you were saying earlier? Did I hear you correctly?
Well, we would have to consider, we would have to change the stop loss now, because it would only affect a partial year. So if we were gonna increase our stop loss, we would have to do that now, effective January 1st. We could, but we could do it in July, but we wouldn't get as much bang for our buck. We might have to consider a premium increase as well, something along those lines.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Our next one, final budget revisions.
Okay, We always do final budget revisions of the year to account for actual expenditures reported. Just quickly going through our general fund 10, I listed in the report the budget revisions made. Those include grant budget revisions. We also had the weight room remodel, and also health insurance claims were higher than expected. And then also in there, we had, at the end of each year, we take a look at our claims for claims incurred in June, but maybe not recorded because it takes 60 or 90 days for the Medicare or medical provider to process those claims. And so our auditor does a calculation based on the reports from the insurance company and tells us whether or not we have to increase or decrease our reserves. Because claims are up, we did have to increase that as well by 125,000. And so we took their recommendation and we did that. But overall, for the general fund 10, the accounts, some accounts were over budget, some were under, so it's a net zero on the entire fund 10 budget. So there was no increase or decrease on the total.
Okay, any questions for Leanne? If not, we'll bring these back at our next meeting for approval. Okay, thank you, Leanne. Item J, State Education Convention. So 2022 convention is slated for January 19th through the 21st in Milwaukee. Joel's got in there, typically board members go down on Tuesday, come home on Friday. If anybody's interested, make sure you let Janet know so we get the hotel reservations and light taken care of.
Yeah, please let us know by the end of the week if you know, and we'll make those arrangements at the end of this week. Now, that doesn't mean that someone couldn't sign up later, and we'll certainly try to accommodate, but the hotels generally fill up quickly. It might not be as quick this year as some other years. Let's just all hope that by January 19th, things will be very, very calm and we'll down there and have a great time and learn a lot about educational trends. But please let Janet know if you are interested.
Has anybody signed up yet?
I think Amy did.
Okay.
Charlie's always there.
Okay.
23 years?
I'm going, my battery went bad twice. Thank you. Okay, item K, extracurricular activities report. Any questions on that? Okay. Our final item, item L. So we're set up, let's let Joe go ahead. You can run it.
Okay. Happy to do that, Dave.
He's talking in my ear, so I'm just gonna let him go.
First of all, Dave's part of this, the next meeting scheduled, our October 11th regular school board meeting at 5:30 p.m. Then October 25th. We'll kind of see how things are going at that time. Right now, they're scheduled to be at the ASC. We will move them here if we need to. And then November 8th and November 22nd, again, those meetings are all at 5:30. But the reason I was talking to Dave's ear is I wanted to point out, this is our last meeting before Wisconsin School Board Week. And every year we send a nice message and thank school board members for serving. This year is a little different. And I know a lot of the crowd is left, but hopefully some people are still watching online. Anybody who would essentially voluntarily put themselves in this position where you sit through hours and hours of passionate community feedback. I know how much, actually I don't know how much time you all have been spent tracking the data, reading the research, following what's happening across the country, across the state, across the region. Never have I seen this kind of pressure been put on school boards. And this is my, I think, 16th year as being a superintendent. I've never seen this. And things have not always been easy. I think, especially the more veteran board members, you've seen some difficult times. I can't say how much, of a great example you've all set for this, for our community by being able to have difficult discussions. Do your best to follow the rules of order and allow the will of the board to be done. And, to be able to disagree and agree to disagree, it's been terrific. And none of us would have chosen to go through this, but I'm sure it's nice that we've been able to go through it together. So thank you to all of our school board members. Your service to our community during this, especially during this time, is something that will always be remembered. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Dave, can you applaud for that?
I'll let the record reflect that the entire audience was applauding. Thank you, Joe, very kind words. And it has been stressful, all of us know that. And there's not a day that goes by that we're not working or dealing with something, but we know what the district is going through, the staff, the teachers, the administration, students, everybody, so we're all in this together. Okay, with that, we'll move to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Mark, is there a second? Amy, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.